There are fewer words more powerful, yet less effective than the words climate crisis. If you haven't already left the video after hearing that, I applaud you, for you either have a will of steel or I'm just showing this to you right now. Regardless, I'm not going to be talking about the science or the facts or any of that. No. I'm going to be talking about this power that those two words have. The power, of course, to turn someone's brain off and make them so bored. Because the climate crisis is very important, but the thing is, nobody cares. And honestly, it's a little shocking to hear about, because it's an extinction-level threat that's approaching quite quickly, and nobody talks about it ever, or if they do, no one listens. And I'm going to be talking about why no one listens. Why is the climate crisis so boring, and why doesn't anyone care? We need to start somewhere. Perhaps at the beginning, which means, oh dear, we need to start with here. In 2006, Albert Arnold Gore, the sitting Vice President of the United States, released a documentary titled An Inconvenient Truth that contained vital information for understanding climate change before it was a well-known issue. It does its job quite well. It contains a lot of information, and it's still shown in schools today. Though it isn't exactly a model of entertainment, but it isn't supposed to be. It's supposed to be informative. It's supposed to tell the world about climate change, that it's real, it's coming, and that it's scary, and we need to do something about it. But it's kind of hard to be scared when you're being put to sleep by the documentary equivalent of the fitness gram pacer test that is Al Gore's voice. This sets kind of a bad example. If the first thing you thought of when you hear the words climate change or climate crisis is Al Gore, anyone would walk away from that conversation immediately. Despite all of this, Al Gore is not the only issue here. Another thing to consider is time. If someone thinks they have a lot of time to do something, it's a lot less likely they're going to do it until they have to. Everyone knows the classic example: a teacher gives you a month to write a paper and you don't do anything meaningful until the last few days. It's the same with this. Climate change is a slow burn. It was described like that right away, and it's still being described like that by a lot of people, though there are some who have decided to change the rhetoric, which brings me to my next point. Anxiety. In the last few years, climate activists have been changing the term used to describe what is happening to our planet. No longer is it climate change, because climate has already changed. Now, it is a climate crisis. If you've taken the time to watch any kind of climate documentary in your life, you would know that the language used to describe the climate crisis and its possible solutions is very negative. No matter what kind of options get presented, the general message is always that the human race needs to band together and do something about it, but no one seems to be doing anything meaningful. The big companies don't want to do anything because profit over people, and I guess they don't realize that they're going to die too yet. The individual can't do anything meaningful because, well, you're just one person. What can you do? This kind of thinking can make the situation seem really hopeless and terrifying. And if something is hopeless, what's the point in thinking about it? Even if it's right on top of us and we have to do something right now, it's a lot easier to not think about what will happen if we don't do anything. People's confidence in their world leaders is slipping because not a lot is actually happening, which leads me to my final point. Politics. Ah yes, politics. A word that carries the same power as the two words climate crisis, because it puts people to sleep. I mentioned being hopeful earlier and how if we all band together and do something, we can really get this dealt with. And we could. If the whole planet really treated this like a crisis, we could totally knock this out of the park with some monumental change to humanity, and we wouldn't have to worry about dying of heat death anymore. But, unfortunately, it's a political issue. I'm sure you've probably heard the name Greta Thunberg, pronounced many different ways, but she's been doing a great job bringing the climate crisis into the public eye once again. It's a huge movement, and that's really great and all, but getting people interested in politics, even if it's over something like this, is really hard. And to get politicians to listen to you, you have to be really loud for a really long time. And that sounds simple, But it's kind of not. We all have lives to deal with, other things that we have to do. We cannot focus our attention on that for that long because that's not how the world works. This brings me to my final point. Focus. You remember a little animated film called Happy Feet? It's about this little penguin guy who doesn't know how to sing like the rest of his kind. Instead, he knows how to dance. He gets ridiculed and exiled for it and yada yada, but that's not the point. The point is that it turns into a preachy environmental film by the end, and no one would have showed up to see that. The filmmakers definitely knew that. They already knew why no one cares about the climate crisis. Keeping people entertained, or keeping people focused, is very important if you want them to pay attention, if you want them to care about anything. If something is not presented well, nobody cares. Making this video, I had to be quite careful. The only reason anyone would ever pay attention to this, or Happy Feet, is because it's quirky and weird. The subject, why doesn't anyone care about the climate crisis? It's not about the climate crisis. It's about no one caring about the climate crisis. That makes it weird. That makes it quirky. That makes it watchable and entertaining. Something to focus on. Okay, this is getting too meta. I'll leave you with this. Are we going to climb out of the climate crisis? I don't have that answer. That's not my job right now. My job is to tell you why no one cares about the climate crisis. Why doesn't anyone care? That is a simple answer. You already knew before you clicked on this or before I showed it to you, because it is not fun, it is not entertaining, and it is not something anyone wants to focus on.